I told myself I was just gonna push record and just talk. Holy Spirit, come down, give me the right words. I really want to talk about something a little more deep, something a little bit more serious. So if this is not for you, keep it scrolling. If you want to listen to it, tap in. Let me take off this, child. I had to take my badge off because y'all not gonna get me in trouble. Report me. Report me. Tell me why I just got done doing Miami Swim Week. Miami Swim Week. I can say that now. And when I tell y'all, it was definitely one for the book. I remember I got the ability to like sketch when my mom left her composition notebook. My mom had this first apartment. I want to say at the time, she was a young mom. My mom probably was no more than maybe 20, 21 years old. And at the time I was 5, right? And I remember she had this notebook, and like I used to write down recipes, like, cause she would cook all the time. So I used to write down everything that she would cook. From there, from writing, and took the ability into drawing, if that makes sense. Before I could even read, before I could comprehend how to even properly communicate, I knew how to draw. My mom really kind of noticed it early. My mom used to write a lot. She was really a really good writer, still a good writer. I used to have a lot of composition notebooks with just pages just left open, right? And I remember as a kid, like going in there and sketching what I would see. I would mimic everything that my mom would do. Everything. Side note, I remember my mom having people come over her house so she could do their hair. And I remember specifically watching her do cornrows on somebody. And if my mom was 20 or 21 at the time, it was 2001, 2002. This is that era of like Nelly. So like people was wearing cornrows and like booty shorts and crop tops. So it was definitely an era time. And I remember mimicking the braid pattern on my doll. And then I made cornrows on my Bratz doll. Like I specifically remember having this Bratz doll. I remember braiding her hair to the back. And my mom was like, oh my God, wow. And that's when I knew God had put something in me, right? Very, very, very early. I could mimic what I seen. I could draw, a lot of things. I could draw how I felt. And it wasn't just even in drawing. My art went into actually clay. My mom would buy me clay from the dollar store back when things was $1. And I remember we had this dog named Dodie. And Dodie was black and white. And I remember sitting there in front of Dodie, balling my hands up and doing the clay in different shapes. I remember showing my mom that I was like in 4th grade, and she just was like, oh my God, look at this girl. She just do everything. Like, she just was blown away by me. So when fashion came into my life, I always tell people fashion chose me. I didn't choose fashion. I wouldn't even just equate it to fashion. God has always talked to me through colors, textures, tones. He even talks in my dreams that way. So it's been that since I was a kid. I had the blessing of staying with my great grandmother, and from the time that I was in 5th grade all the way up until high school, she took investing into my craft very serious. And let me back up some. After I got done with my mom, I got an opportunity to stay with my aunt and uncle for a little bit. They put me into Coca, which advanced my drawing skills for fashion illustration. But I had the pleasures and luxuries with staying with my grandmother, who invested in me every year. Like I remember taking my doll's clothes and cutting up sheets, because she wouldn't buy me fabric. She was like, you got to show me what you could do first before we go and get you fabric. I would cut up my sheets and do glue and like make little outfits. And like all of my aunts would sit around and be like, look at this girl. Look at her making these little outfits. I used to use tissue paper. I used to use old bed sheets. I used to use all different types of stuff. Moving forward, after that, I probably want to say around like 5th or 6th grade, I started doing physical garments, like my size. And so I used to poke holes in little t-shirts and like thread them with strings on the side. All this was talent that God had blessed me with, a gift that God had dropped down into my world. And when I got older, I got more sensitive about my craft, and I started trying to hide it from the world. Especially when I got to college, I just didn't think I was talented enough to compete with everybody that was around me. There was a period of time where I wasn't proud of my work. And I can't tell you how big of a full circle moment this is to be a part of a big old show, go to Miami and be personally invited, and to have feedback like, oh girl, your stuff is really good. Like it feels like Spanx. I feel like I'm supported, was even truly a bigger blessing. I made a status on Facebook and I said, like, if you allow people to tell you your worth, you will always never be good enough. Having this conversation now with myself and having this full circle moment, I'm starting to realize, like, I start to value myself as a penny. Y'all hear all that years, the years that I put in, and to think that I allowed that to impact me for so long and not walk in my own purpose is crazy. And to not understand that the enemy has specific attacks against that. That's the reason why I'm on here having this conversation, to bring it full circle. God told me what I was supposed to do at 5 years old, but I never understood what the journey would bring. Thank you, Holy Spirit. God showed me something, and I still didn't know how to treasure it. And now that I look back, I don't think it's wasted time. I think it was something I had to learn. But walking in my truth and walking in my purpose is priority to me. I will no longer allow people to tell me what I'm worth. I will no longer allow people to get in my head about what it is that I am here for on this earth. And I will no longer try to put a certain look or plan together as to how I should navigate it. With that being said, if I could really preach to somebody like about your purpose, do whatever God told you to do. If you are supposed to be a dancer, be a dancer. If you're supposed to be a writer, be a writer. I don't care how bad you think that book is. I don't care if you think you're not ready. Be obedient to God. Because if you think about it, the enemy knows God's plans too. Why wouldn't he set booby traps up? To distract you. The enemy is there for confusion. He is there to deter, to distract, to depress, to get in the way. I think somebody needed to hear that today. I needed to hear it. So I'm telling you, as somebody who just came back from Fashion Miami Swim Week, as somebody who was sewing in her living room, look at me now. I could tell you one thing. If I could really nail it into your head, never allow people to tell you what you are worth. Only God has that power.